But here it is. It's got to be true. Meet the newest member of the Council on Foreign Relations, George Clooney. The Oscar winner has been granted life membership in the prestigious think tank. Charlie Rose and New York Times columnist Nicholas Kristof nominated him. CFR's vice president, Lisa Shields, cited the actor's advocacy on the Darfur crisis and the importance of non-traditional voices in foreign policy. Michael Douglas, Warren Beatty are also lifetime members, and Angelina Jolie scored a term memberships set aside for junior wonks in 2007. In a statement via CFR, Clooney said, "I'm honored to have been nominated, and I hear the initiation ritual is wild." It's all so funny, the fact that our misleaders actually involve themselves either wittingly or unwittingly in occult-based organizations. These are the sinister forces that we discuss and reference so many times on the show. That George Clooney joining the CFR story I first saw from voltairenet.org. Twilight star Robert Pattinson related to Vlad the Impaler. That's from the New York Daily News, again in tabloid rags. But this gets into the story, and I believe it even goes in to talk about how Robert Pattinson, star of Twilight, related to Vlad the Impaler, but so is Bush and Cheney, and they're related to Obama, and Prince Harry and Prince William, and they're all a big, happy, blue blood, elite bloodline. Seinfeld rails against Gaga's less-than-ladylike behavior. The amazing investigations into the occult symbolism going on in a lot of pop culture. Of course, we always reference VigilantCitizen.com. A crazy old Mickey Mouse cartoon has the Huffington Post asking if Mickey Mouse was a drug dealer. You got to look at the frames from the comic book. That reminds me of the big controversy, moral panic years ago about Mighty Mouse sniffing some powder out of a flower that gave him super power. I like that. Sniffing powder out of a flower to get more power. And it was a big, huge thing, and the church was all rabble-rabbled about it. Again, that was all the stuff about media panic growing up in the church, that it was always rock and roll is bad and movies are terrible and all this stuff that only made me want to get interested in it. But anyway, FEMA and DHS back the new disaster hero game. More on that from GamePolitics.com. Of course, if you have Guitar Hero, why not have, FEMA Hero? Where we can show you how to lock down cities and towns and deny care and basic human and civil rights. But over to the news world, increasingly nonprofits feel a need for investigative reporting. That's essentially outsourcing investigative reporting now. And our last note on media memes, I almost posted up by itself when I was trying to think of what would be a nice big kind of special episode 175 if we maybe just went over a couple of stories in really great detail. But I guess I'm not there yet, and we still just like to do the massive data mining, and I think, again, that's why folks like the site and show, is because it has the mass amounts of info, and you can go dive in deeper later on your own. And then again, you have to come back to the cave and tell us all about it, though. But the Illuminati psyop of the Orson Welles War of the Worlds broadcast, Henry Mako has a new article on this, and of course its connections to the Princeton Radio Project. You may recall we briefly touched on this subject when we interviewed Dr. Leonard Horowitz at the recent Conspiracy Conference. Of course, top of the page, you can hit all our exclusive coverage, all those interviews from ConspiracyCon with Dr. Leonard Horowitz and Michael Tessarian and Tex Mars and Jordan Maxwell and tons of other folks. And again, that's the kind of topics I think that are more up my alley. And I do wonder, and I've talked about this with folks, that possibly keeping up this kind of rate of production in the current way that I'm doing it, I may totally burn out. And maybe if and when we reach that point, however, we learn how to grow and spread this media monarchy umbrella, whether that would mean getting other folks involved as editors, which I would like to do. If there's a certain area you're most interested in and you could post something once a week, whether it was an article with a list of headlines or anything, send me an email, mediamonarchy@gmail.com. That's how we could grow this. Get more people working on the other sites, foodworldorder.com and cyberspacewar.com. And then maybe I would just focus on media, memes, pop a culture, if you will. But a few more things to go down this 624 news purge. A little bit of murder and mayhem from Copycat Effect going into the Twilight language of the recent Del Taco hit and making the connections with Luby's Cafe and all of the other Copycat Effect cluster mass murder contagion stories. We also have 3 arrested in a DC murder for hire case. But on to Obamasiah and his apostles of war. Kagan calls Israeli judge, who some refer to this activist judge as Judge Dredd. Kagan calls her, or rather him, my judicial hero. We also have Blagojevich on tape, of course, his corruption trial going on. No one really paying attention to this, but we now have Blago on tape saying, get Obama to fundraise from Warren Buffett and Bill Gates. Again, guys intimately connected to the whole structure, the round table structure. Gates and all his Planned Parenthood, eugenics, seed vault, flying syringes, depopulation. Warren Buffett, same thing. This corruption trial of the Chicago machine going on, but again, we're too busy watching football with a fake catharsis. We'll get into that a little bit more a little bit later. But boy, do we have an Oregon oddity for you, my friends, from the Washington Post as well as shtfplan.com. That's, of course, shit hitting the fan plan. Oregon District Attorney may prosecute Al Gore for sexual assault. I believe the story goes back to 2006. Al Gore was in Portland. He was getting a massage. Apparently, there was some kind of sexual advances. Something happened. I haven't read into all the ugly details of the story. Apparently, she kept some clothing as some bit of evidence, which, of course, instantly reminds you of Lewinsky. But this all comes on the heels of Al and Tipper Gore divorcing after, I think, 30 or 40 years of marriage. And it comes back to the land of the sex scandal, Portland, Oregon. Of course, we have Bob Packwood and our own recent scandals involving Mayor Sam Adams. But the other note is that the National Enquirer said it decided not to pay for this Gore sex story interview. They said no money changed hands. They didn't want any money to change hands because then that would let folks be able to point a finger and say this is just a put up, pay off, money sensationalist piece. But it's interesting to note, and we'll do it quickly, that sometimes outlets like the National Enquirer are outside of the sort of mainline, mainstream media structure. Yeah, they're stupid rags 95% of the time, but they do break important stories. Now, a lot of times it is of a tabloid sex nature, because that's what sells. But it's also a great way to show the hypocrisy of our moralistic misleaders. They did the John Edwards story. And you also notice, too, that they don't seem to get sued all that often. So, my friends, that was the massive June 24th news purge, war pigs,